Hello and welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I'm your host, Joel Lalgee. It is great to be with you guys as always every week. I'm super pumped today. We are going international. We are heading to Scotland for this week's episode. I have the one and only Stephen McGrath with us. Stephen, welcome to the show, man. Why don't you give everybody a quick intro on who you are, what you do, and maybe even let us know where you're actually from in Scotland as well.
Yeah, no problem. So, I'm Stephen McGrath. I currently live in Glasgow in Scotland.
Let's go Rangers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's always a dicey statement to make. It could go really good or really bad, but that was a good one, so that's fine. Good. Been in recruitment and in this industry for about 15 years now. So wow. I spent just over a decade of that in recruitment. So agency, RPO, and then in-house at the end of that, and then switched to building recruitment technology. Cool. Worked with Candidate ID, which we sold to iCIMS, and now I am the product experience manager at Poetry, which is just a fancy way of saying I collect all the feedback from everywhere and try and make our technology better. So, yeah.
So there's a couple terms in there that not everybody listening might be familiar with. So first thing you said was RPO. So give us an idea of like what is an RPO? So for anyone who hears RPO, what does that mean?
Yeah, so RPOs are your companies like Adecco, like Randstad, like AMS, and what they do is they essentially take recruiters on assignment for other companies. So my assignments were with Saudi Aramco and later General Electric. So I was basically seconded to be part of their TA efforts. That company would contract you from the company that you worked with. So that's kind of how that lays out. RPOs are very interesting because they've got technology arms, they've got, payroll arms, they've got implementation arms. They really try and do a lot within the kind of recruiting space. And the core kind of functionality of that is really just having kind of embedded talent in other organizations.
Yeah, so when you're working for an RPO, you might be, like you said, working with General Electric. It's very similar to actually working for General Electric, except for the fact that you're not working for them. You're working for a different company. So you're on a different company's payroll, but you're basically acting like a recruiter from General Electric.
Yeah, really, really fun because you can get changed assignment really quickly. So you can be working for one company on a Friday, get a call on a Monday, and you're shifted over to something else if there's reduced spend or anything like that. So it's quite a good environment, fun environment to be in.
I love it, man. I love it. And then you also mentioned iCIMS. So for anyone who doesn't know iCIMS, that's an ATS, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
What about Candidate ID? What did Candidate ID do?
So Candidate ID, we basically were a marketing automation platform for recruitment. So think of like Marketo and Pardot and stuff like that. That was trying to bring that kind of B2B sales element or B2C sales element of like, hey, you left this in your basket. Do you want to do like that kind of really tailored automation feel into recruitment? So we used to use the example all the time of if you've gone on to H&M.com and you've looked at a t-shirt and you've looked at 3 other ones similar, the first thing you do is get an email, an hour later, like, hey, did you mean to have a look at that? Why don't you try this? And we were trying to do that from a recruitment world. So candidates would come in and essentially go through this decision tree method of if this, then that. So if they clicked on a job, send them some more information. And it was all about building relationships rather than passive, emails back and forth type thing.
So one of the topics that's come up a lot, and we're going to get into some of the news, but one of the topics that seems to be coming up all the time is this idea of ghost jobs. And so obviously you worked with an ATS company. So like what, from your experience, if you've run into ghost jobs, like what's your thought on this phenomenon and why are a lot of people talking about it?
So I think it depends on what you want to call it. Some might call it evergreen roles. Some might call it talent pipelining. It might be things like that where we know we're going to hire in 3 months, or we predict, because you know nothing in this world. We predict we're going to hire in 3 months. So what we're doing is we're putting roles out there to pipeline. And unfortunately, some of those don't come to fruition, and they might fall by the wayside. And effectively, that might be a ghost job, right? Like that could be what that is considered as. You kind of had it in the agency world as well, right? Like you would bring in spec CVs that you knew clients would love, and you would say to those candidates, hey, I really would love to market the opportunity. Now, I'm talking like when I was doing it 10, 12 years ago, that was a thing that I'm hoping that the industry has matured since then. But
no, I mean, a lot of people still do that. It's like the most placeable candidate, right? Where you find a candidate, market their info to people.
Exactly, right. But what you're pitching, you do that two ways. You either pitch the candidate the very honest truth of that, of I love your experience, I've got clients that would love your experience, or hey, I've got this job, and then you scramble and try and find the job.
Yeah.
So I think from an ATS point of view, ghost jobs do exist in the term of they're probably evergreen roles or they're talent pipelining. So the person that is putting that first foot forward thinks that they're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, circumstances change and things can just fall by the wayside. And I think that's where the candidate experience comes into, I've applied for something that doesn't materialize, and that feels, a bit rubbish. I was going to swear there, but I don't think I'm allowed to. So
I think what people got to realize is right now it just feels like you're just applying into a black hole. So if you don't hear back, then that's just going to reinforce this whole idea of ghost jobs. But I just wanted to get your inside of view on that. So now you're with poetry, which you touched on a little bit, but what exactly is poetry? What are you guys working on? Because I know you guys are working some exciting stuff. Shout out to Adam Gordon as well. I know you guys work closely together. So what are you guys building over there?
yeah, so poetry is basically a kind of workspace created for recruiters. What we had kind of realized and thought about was the fact that recruiters don't really have a space where they have all of their assets. So at Poetry, we're not really interested in candidate information. There's a lot of places where candidate information is stored in the recruitment lifecycle, but we are really interested in lassoing all of your assets together. So things like all your recruitment marketing, your recruitment operations, all the learning that you do, and all the tools that you use, Boolean builders and things like that. Now, we've built versions of those things. So we built 28 solutions that will address most of those issues. Or you can also introduce kind of third-party solutions in. So launch your ATS, launch your CRM from this recruiter workspace. We are heavily infused with AI, so we have embraced that with open arms, but we have also really set guardrails around that. So the use ChatGPT to write a job description isn't really feasible because it doesn't know you, it doesn't know your brand, it doesn't touch on anything personal. And what you do in Poetry is you put all of that information into our system, and the output is pretty close to right first time for what you can send out in terms of behalf of companies and stuff like that. So it's really, mate, it is mental to be part of a startup in this kind of AI revolution of the past kind of 18 months of my life. Things are moving so fast. And buzzwords are coming left, right, and center from everywhere. And we've just got to try and stay true to the course. And our course is, how can we maximize recruiter efficiency so they can do the stuff that matters? Build relationships, speak to candidates. That's it.
You mentioned, obviously a lot of AI buzz, particularly over the last 18 months to 2 years, really since ChatGPT kind of hit the market. What advice do you have for recruiters, recruiting leaders, really anyone professionally when you're looking at like AI tools? Like what advice do you have to give to people when they're like evaluating a new tool? And I mean, one thing you said was like staying true to the course. So like, how do you kind of do that while it almost seems like an infinite number of like shiny objects that are heading people's way?
Well, very interestingly, in Europe in particular right now, we've just had a relaunch of the updated kind of EU AI regulations. So there's going to be things in the very near future which you just simply can and cannot do. And I imagine that that will find its way across the pond, pretty kind of quick. Well, certain states maybe more than others. But I think realistically, you've got to have a goal in mind, right? What is it that you want to do, and what is your pain points? Mike Hughes, who is our kind of CTO, he's always looking for the why. Why should we build that? What's the compelling reason? So if you have a real kind of pain points with assessing candidates, then using AI to do first stage assessments might be a really good way to get rid of that bottleneck. If you've got the pain point that we address, which is collaboration, content writing, sharing, finding tools, then that might be a good shout as well. But you probably got to start with the why, and don't lose sight of that in the world of, hey, we can do everything and all the time and use this for that. And, the amount of people I see commenting and interacting on AI related posts on LinkedIn with a word to get the latest version of, whatever that thing is. And I'm just like, guys, nobody's actually showing you anything that this can do. It's just saying, I've thought of some prompts. So do your research. Don't lose sight of the why. That's the answer to your question.
No, man, I love that. I love it. And I think that's huge, right? It's something I talk a lot about, is like the use cases of what we've seen in recruitment. Um, I mean, I throw it out there. I'm involved in a lot of these conversations, and you only usually get like a handful of use cases that people are using AI for, and then you drill down and you drill down and you drill down, and to your point, you realize like there's a limited amount. So I think the people who are able to understand, number one, what's the process, then look at that process and break it down to where you can find bottlenecks, and it's almost like a manufacturing line, right? Like if we could break down the recruitment process like that, I think the challenge for a lot of people who are selling into recruitment, so now speaking about like the AI tech companies that are like kind of flooding the industry, is a lot of them underestimate how different a recruitment process is at each company and how people do things so differently. And so really having like a universal problem, it's kind of hard to find because everybody's got different issues because everyone's got a different process.
So we found that exactly to be true, right? So when we first built Poetry, it was all about, we'll write your job descriptions, right? Because we have done 100 hours of focus groups for job descriptions and job adverts. We've spoken to industry leaders, and they dictate that this is what the template is. And then we go and speak to a regulated company in the financial world or the entertainment industry, for example, and they say, no, my HR people says it needs to be written like this. And we'll go, right, okay. So we had to provide people options, and we had to make the platform flexible, and you had to build an entire different way of doing things. And I think that's the thing, that I don't want to make, we'll move on from Poetry after I finish this as well, but like out of the 28 solutions that we have, for example, my first thing I recommend anybody to do when they log onto our platform is choose which ones you're going to switch off. I want you to focus on the 4 or 5 problems that you are facing today as a recruitment team, and we're going to start there. And then we can build in and see what the rest of the bells and whistles do after that. But if we're not addressing problems from the get-go, then we're up the creek without a paddle. So I think that's the kind of thing. Yeah, like you really need to kind of focus on, what am I trying to achieve? Doing more with less. Recruiters that are, had the rug pulled from under them. Everybody's expected to collaborate with hiring managers better. They might not understand how to do that. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that are kind of going on in the background. It's a crazy time right now in the industry. And I don't predict that that's going to stop in 2025. It might get a little bit crazier.
I get asked that question all the time. I do a TikTok live pretty much every day, and obviously this is more from like the job seeker point of view. And most common question: when is the market going to get better? And I used to say Well, it was like last year. I was like, oh, well, maybe in 2025 things will get better. Um, but we're not even seeing it from the job, just the job market as a whole. And obviously, the job market and recruitment are so tied hand in hand. Because if it's a job market that we have right now, where there's not a lot of demand for hiring, recruiters get impacted negatively. And so it's one of the reasons why a lot of the content I have is around job seekers too, because I know a lot of recruiters that are job seekers, which kind of actually rolls us into our first kind of focus point for the week. So let me share my screen here, and yeah, there's no rule. You can mention poetry as much as you want as well.
I just don't.
So
I just like. I'm just here to, sit and talk to you about industry stuff. So I'm
I'm
not.
getting commission.
I,
Everyone who signs up to Poetry from this will get commission from me. So,
yeah, you get out. Oh no, you're alcohol free now, aren't you? So I was going to
I'm
say you get
alcohol
one.
free.
You're going to get. I was going to say you get 1 pint per sign up, but that's not even. That's not even going to work.
I get the Heineken NA
Yeah,
low,
yeah, yeah,
which it costs the same as regular alcohol. That's
yeah.
like
I know. Yeah,
the
yeah,
worst thing. So basically, this news came out. HSBC, obviously a massive global bank, is doing layoffs, and they've got a new focus. So they're shifting its focus, apparently from M&A activity, and they're really wanting to focus on Asia versus the Americas as well. But a lot of people are commenting on this, and basically saying that like the new trend that we're seeing with a lot of these companies is just cost cutting. And then when we dive deeper into like what that cost cutting is, the cost cutting is cutting people, cutting that middle management layer, that kind of layer of just process, people that are involved in process, with the hope that technology is going to be able to do that same process. So, um, number one, obviously, you work with a lot of companies. I assume globally, at least
yeah.
in the UK. So, like, is this something that you're seeing and hearing a lot of your clients talk about? And like, what are your thoughts on this? It seems like in some ways it's nothing new. Companies are wanting to cut costs,
Yeah.
um, but it also seems like the cost is just always human capital. Or at least it has been in the last year. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I we do work with global companies, and absolutely everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet, and that hymn sheet is uh, we are reducing headcount either in our recruitment team or wider out with that, and we're expecting that technology will plug the gaps. Now, a little bit of a kind of silver lining in that is that companies, especially large global companies, seem to be realizing quite quickly that they can't quite plug the gaps as fast as they thought they could. And they're trying to like scramble to kind of create stuff. So there's going to be this weird kind of transition period, I think, where people will probably get laid off. Then they'll get hired back as contractors in various roles, maybe for another company, and it might just be that they have to pivot to contractor type roles.
Are you seeing a lot more contract opportunities in the UK?
Yeah, so we speak to recruitment leaders regularly who, even within their own teams, are they laid off 10 recruiters in 24, and they've just hired 5 contractors back for 25 duration, up to 12 months. We're seeing that some people from a wider business stance, certainly the news, that they've got rid of that kind of middle layer, like you're saying, right? They essentially train our junior people to use technology enough to be as good enough as a middle person, and keep our management. And what we're kind of seeing is that people are kind of bleeding back into those roles. But I mean, how long is a piece of string? There's no job security in that. There is no I get to pay my bills at the end of the month because a company might change its mind on Friday because that thing that you were going to do has been fulfilled. I feel very passionate about this in terms of we always seem to have something that is, causing the human detriment element of that. And whether that's, over forecasting, whether that's global pandemics, whether that's office spaces, whether that's working from home isn't working, and whether it's now technology, not just HSBC, but if you look at a large array, of global companies, pretty much all of them. Like, what's the reason for your layoffs? And they just write cause AI, and they just move on from it. Like there's no accountability there.
The most vocal person, right, was Zuckerberg over at Meta, where he's on a podcast basically saying AI now is as effective as like a mid-level engineer, and then a couple of days after that, there's the news about a layoff of low performers, and then people are complaining that there was no performance or pips given. So it's like, where did this come out of?
I think that's the thing. Like, what's going to have to happen though is a lot of these companies are going to have to develop something really fast. I mean, I don't know if Zuckerberg has ever used any kind of customer-facing AI products that Meta make, but they certainly can't replace anybody that is doing a job, in my opinion. Right? Like they're all right, but you definitely need to check everything that is coming out of a lot of these tools. So it's almost an interesting point of is the job market just going to be entry-level skills with the ability to, which gives you the ability to read and understand things enough to go, that's right and that's wrong. Is that the world that we're about to kind of face over the next few years? But yeah, I think from my point of view and from what we are certainly seeing, everywhere is, every global company is finding a way to tighten the purse strings and really make that, make some sort of excuse. And this one is the technology one.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of videos on this too. With you kind of mentioned the like the remote work and how like that pushback to office was just kind of like layoffs in a lot of ways. Like the first layer, and then you can always track it back. Like I've been tracking like these layoffs now, and it's always like the return to office is first. Let's get people, and then you have people who just quit, and then it's usually some sort of layoff after that. And I think last year it seemed like it was more about, it seemed like they were more focused on, hey, we're just trying to cut costs. We want to increase the bottom line. But then now, like you said, this year, it does seem like the excuse is, technology can just do it better than humans, which is just so ironic because the whole of 2024, it was like the catch line that everybody was using was AI won't replace you, but someone using AI will.
No,
but AI will replace you.
Yeah,
because,
but wouldn't it be a wonderful world if companies just came out and said, hey, we just want to make as much money as possible, and actually the way that we can do that is get rid of 3,000 people that we pay $100,000 a year towards. Like that, I mean, that I would actually respect that way more than I would if they were like, AI might do it, and it's like, well, it's either going to do it or it's not going to do it, right? Like, or when you say the return to office, like that essentially was who's going to leave before we have to fire them, right? Like that, like it's those kind of things. Like, stop disguising it as like, I think those kind of things play with people's emotions as well. It's I have friends that have been out of work for quite a long time, and it's a considerable ride when you feel like it's coming back. Boom, something else happens, and you end up back to the start. So I wish they would just stand in front of like a podium somewhere and go, listen guys, we're a company, we report to X, we need to make this much this year, and that's how the story goes. And I would be like,
I think there are some companies I think which are kind of starting to kind of talk more openly about stuff, because I think there's such a movement now. It's like the anti-work movement, I guess you would consider it, where it's which I don't know whether it's anti-work movement or just like there's such a push now of like, I mean, I produce a lot of this content where it's like, go look out for yourself. There's no job stability. The loyalty is done. So I think there's a lot more employees speaking up. Obviously on social media, it's a lot easier to go viral and get your voice out there. And I think that's forcing a lot more executives to almost like be really harsh, but they're really just saying like what they actually think. And I do think that's helpful, because I think what's happened is the employer brand movement has tried to create these like images of companies like as these like, these really amazing places where everyone's really happy and comfortable. But then you can't hide that when the last 3 years it's literally been just like bloodbaths of like heartless layoffs. And I just don't think you can say like, hey, we really care about our people and we love our people.
That's the American. It's almost like the American dream, right? The American dream was you go to somewhere, you find a job in a factory, you work there, your dad works there, your grandpa's worked there, your son's going to work there, and they actually care about that lineage of like, the passing the baton. Everybody's got a great pension, they can all afford a house. Like there's that, and it's almost like the EVP world clings on to that, right? Like what's the dream? The dream is that it's going to be a fairy tale. And I think to counter that slightly, I think you've got a lot of people in TA that believe in that dream, right? So you've got a lot of recruiters. They might be agency recruiters, they might be RPO recruiters that are representing a company that have really bought into the idea of, this company is different and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to represent them. Or they might be in-house and they have been drawn in by the culture that they were brought in to kind of represent. And I think from that point of view, recruiters probably get the blame when the blame doesn't really lie with them because they've bought into the same hype that everybody else is buying into, which is this company's different. We've got a different story. We want to share this. We don't. But actually, the reality is that it's cost cutting and measures that are going to always win out in the end when every company needs to, report to, most companies need to report to, a bunch of suits round a boardroom table that are assessing whether it's a red or a green light on that spreadsheet.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, in recruitment, I think we focus on like the people and the individuals in the organization. So maybe you work with the hiring manager and you build that good relationship. And I think that is kind of the dichotomy where you have the organization as a whole and what's best for the organization, which is cutting the people, but then the actual people in there as a recruiter, you're going to get to know those people, and there is the actual culture of people. It's so hard to communicate that. One story, I remember recruiting a recruiter to a company that happened to be in the real estate space, and I was getting this guy like more money, and it was it was genuinely a good opportunity. But I did say to him a couple times, like, hey, you really need to think about the industry you're going into because they're saying that it's solid. And I know that you've asked them, like, hey, are you guys solid? Are the financials looking good? And they've said yes, but you need to just like take a step back and look at the industry. And he's like, no, I appreciate you saying that. I've looked at the risk, took the job. And then it was like, 6 months later, they're having rounds of layoffs. And obviously, like the recruitment was part of those layoffs. And I DM'd him and said, look, man, like at the end of the day, like you took the chance, right? Like you were making 30-40% more. There's obvious why you took the role, and I get that. Um, and I think that like for recruiters out there, there is that part of it where sometimes you have to have that conversation and say, look, like I'm presenting you the new opportunity, but you also, I think, we just need to have that view of like nothing is actually stable, and especially in this day and age, a tool could develop that could, in theory, take away your job, and then that person's going to the CFO that doesn't even connect it, doesn't even know you. CFO is just focused on the books, so it's like you just got to know that.
That's absolutely true, and it is like recruiters always get a bad rap from candidates. I think that's going to be a tale as old as time, but they do care, right? Like I mean, yeah, there's people that. People get into that job because there's an element of caring for people, right? Obviously, there's the money aspect in agency world. It's as if you're all cloaked, millionaires that are sunning themselves in Dubai on a yacht, just placing candidates, which, by the way, is not the case for anybody that I know. But, most people that I know that even fell into recruitment, like myself, I didn't think the recruitment was going to be a career. But I, excelled at some companies I definitely did not, but I excelled when I excelled because I cared about people and I cared about what the end outcome was and how that person felt in offering them their dream opportunity. And you can't predict a market all the time, and unfortunately, you're when I was an agency recruiter, I used to do two things which I kind of felt like made me a bit unique, which was I would pick a kind of like career starter of the week, which I would basically take somebody that was applying for jobs that wasn't relevant, i.e. a 16-year-old that's just left school that's applying for engineering roles, in a kind of warehouse in Glasgow. And I would basically spend an hour with them and I would talk through their CV and I would say, this is what steps you need to take. I would suggest going back to college. Here's the qualifications. Here's the colleges that do that. We're in a very lucky position where schooling is free in Scotland, so that's an easier thing to stay. That's an easier thing to state than if it's not. But I would try and kind of just build a bit of a framework where they would then maintain a relationship with me and say, hey, 3 years later, I'm now doing this job and I'm looking for my next one, right? Like that was the kind of idea behind it. But the other thing that I did, which probably was a little bit counterproductive in some cases, was tell people if I thought that they shouldn't take a job, because of where they were at in life. And that example that you've just given there, I worked with an engineering kind of company just outside of Glasgow who I knew were having financial troubles and were looking to just hire an entry-level person. And I had heard from the recruiter at that time that they had some layoffs coming out. And I basically said to the three candidates, if you want to take this opportunity, here are the facts. Absolutely go for it and press the button if you want to press it. But my guess is that you and I are going to be talking in 6 to 12 months. And it's almost as if like, if we could, there was lots of transactional things I did as a recruiter. Of course there was. But like, I always tried to keep true to those because I felt like I cared enough about people that I wanted to see them do well. So that's a bit of a segue away from where we were talking about. But I think just it's that people at the core is a constant element through everybody that I've met in this industry, whether it's, through all the kind of genres of the industry that I've mentioned. And for, us to get the rap that we don't care, everybody I know cares. Like everyone.
I tell people that all the time. It's like most recruiters I know, they're great parents. They want to support their families. They care about the candidates they're dealing with. They care about the companies they work with. Um, but obviously, they do get a bad rap, which kind of moves us on to I want to share a video that a friend of ours, friend of the industry, Will Grassoff. Shout out to Will too. If you don't follow Will on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
you
it's
should.
very funny.
I love his tagline too: "Get rich or die hiring, recruiter first." So basically, anyone who's listening to this who isn't watching, I'm going to share a video from Will here. Let me just. I'm just going to make sure the sound works.
True epidemic hitting the recruitment industry is the quite often salty and hurtful replies recruiters get from disgruntled candidates. I've asked my team to dig out the most hurtful, upsetting ones and to read them to me to see what we can learn from this. Follow me. Fucking people out there.
I will never work with you, you decrepit weasel.
I'd rather eat shit than work with a recruiter like you.
If you would have bothered to actually read my profile, you'd see that I currently earn 3 times that amount. I suggest you stop wasting mine, and no doubt others, time and get a proper job. Please delete my details and the GDPR regs. KR.
Who the hell do you think you are? You remind me of an unclogged drain. Never mess with me again.
Laugh out loud. Fuck off.
Oh my God, he is hilarious. We were kind of talking about this earlier, and we just talked about that. Why I get like why recruiters have such a bad rap for sure. But what are some of the things you think we could do? What are some of the things that you think we could just do as an industry to maybe change some of this mindset? Because I feel like I hear these complaints all the time. I also don't see a ton of recruiters out there like producing content and things like that. But like, what I don't know. What are some of your thoughts on how we can change this narrative? Because I feel like most recruiters I know are actually good people, and at the end of the day, we're trying to help people get jobs as well. So, what are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, so I think we've got to scrap the narrative that we're too busy, right? Which is really detrimental to the thought process. Oh, I can't do that because I'm too busy. So you can do a 30-second video introducing yourself to the world and your candidate base.
From the shower.
Yeah, well, if you see my LinkedIn, yeah, that is where I do all of mine. So, and that's not a joke either. So, yeah, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, if you're asking for 30 seconds of someone's day, and, look, you might even have to do 3 or 4 takes of that, but like, put the kettle on, stand, 100 meters away from it, try a couple of videos and introduce yourself to the world. I also think, just do a bit of research. Like, see what your candidates are responding to and meet them where they are, right? So if you've got developers that love reading blogs, put some blogs out there. Put them in a place that they can find them. Make it useful for them. If you are working with, entry-level professionals or people that are going to be on their phone, which is everybody, but you know what I mean by that, right? Then meet them at the video. Meet them where they're used to doing it.
Are you seeing more of your clients and stuff like with a real focus on video? Like, is that something that a lot more companies are focusing on?
Yes, I think so. Like, I think that they are. Some of them are still getting it very wrong because they're trying too hard. And I think that that's where the key is. The key is that you can't really try too hard in this. People want to hear from real people that are talking about real things. So I think when you then overly produce a corporate video to talk about how real you are is kind of like counterintuitive in that sense. It should really just be, here's Sarah, our, director of X, and this is why Sarah loves working here. And then introduce her in a bit more of a personal level so people can get to know her and they want to work for her. The difficulty with that is that you need to obviously get people to agree to doing that and trying to buy in there. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. But more companies are doing videos. And some of them are doing it really, really well. Some of them are doing it really well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously LinkedIn is pushing more video. I'm obviously a big proponent of video. But I just think in general, one thing I've noticed is in just producing content with people and meeting them where they're at, like doing live shows on TikTok. It's like a helpful thing for the brand, because one of the things people say to me is like, oh, you're helpful, or you're just being authentic and real. And if I don't have the answer to something, I'm just like, hey, I don't have the answer. And, I think for a long time, we just kind of like hid ourselves and we're like secretive, and, people can't get a hold of us on LinkedIn. No recruiters respond. It's one of the biggest things that people say. They're like, I don't get it. No recruiters responding to me. So I think, like you said, it's taking that time and just like wanting to connect with people. And sure, maybe they're not going to be a placement, maybe they're not going to be someone that you hire, but like, it's okay. You can still say like, hey, thanks for the message, blah blah blah, right? Just
so I have it's obviously not candidate and recruiter focused, but I posted about 3 weeks ago. I posted a video on LinkedIn of a little boy upside down swinging his head inside a puddle. And it was basically like, when it's been week 6 of I'll get back to you next week, right? That was the caption. From that post, I had 4 companies message me or email me basically saying, hey, saw that post, been meaning to get back in touch with you. And it's like, so there's an element of humour in there, which I really advocate for, because I think that that's important as well. Try and break the ice by making people laugh. But also, you never know who's watching what. So, that candidate, that it could be the dream candidate for a role, could just be scrolling, Joel's feed, and then all of a sudden that video that really speaks to them pops out and they apply for that job. So I think, like, here's another one. Don't expect that you're going to get immediate returns from any of those efforts, and don't get disheartened by it. Just keep meeting people where they are, and eventually, the right people will see the content that you create, in whatever form that is right for you.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, look, it's been a great episode. I love the wisdom. I love everything that you shared. Love just hearing about your background as well. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? They're interested in learning more. And then, guys, I will also say, Steven's content is hilarious. It's funny. It's authentic. And like, if you meet him in real life, same guy online as offline, genuine. Just a real good dude to connect with. Where can people find you? And then my other question is, what events are you going to this year as well?
So you're going to get me into trouble here, Joel, because currently the only place to find me is LinkedIn. I don't actually have any other social media, personally or professionally. No, I post my shower videos on LinkedIn, so you don't even need to pay. You don't even need to pay $10 a month to see me. So yeah, that's where everything is from me, just from both a personal and professional point of view. Not everything I post is serious, and I do try and give some advice out there and try and help people. In terms of events, I'm still deciding is the honest truth. So there's a couple of TA events in Europe that are coming up. Likelihood is Recfest is a 100%, both hopefully in the UK and in Nashville again. And we're a small startup in Scotland, so I've really got to put a business case forward. So if you really want to see me in like Vegas or anything like that, like just send Adam Gordon a message on LinkedIn and just say Stephen needs to be there. Yes, yeah, just anything along those lines. All the above. So yeah, we go to the usual suspects. Most the Recfest, the Unleash events, some RL100 events and stuff like that. So. I'm wearing a kilt, so I'm very easy to see, and I also have a massive ginger beard.
Yeah, man, and you're like the friendliest guy ever, and like super approachable, and like just a easy guy to hang out with. And
no, I appreciate that, dude. I feel the same about you. So
that's good. That's good, man. Well, look, we'll end with this because I've been ending all the podcasts with this. If there was one piece of advice that you have just for people in their career, what would it be?
Embrace challenges. If you don't,
I love it.
If you don't know how to do something, just do it and figure it out later. So I think that's a Richard Branson quote, but he probably puts it a bit more kind of poetical than I do. But the reality is that I wouldn't be where I was today if I didn't just go and learn things and then figure out, how to put the bricks in place later. And I think, that the ability to be adaptable, to go and do your research and to bring multiple skills into a job role is easy to say, but actually putting that into practical use is where kind of separates you from the pack. So, choose a path and go and embark in learning on that path. Do everything you can to make your dream come true, I guess, is the cheesy way to say that.
Nah, man, I love it. It's it kind of reminds me of just like there's not like one linear path that people have, which I think it's so easy to get trapped into that thinking, like, oh, I'm up on this career path, or I'm disappointed, or there's like this one way of doing things. And I was thinking about that even in my own journey to date. Very similar, like, do stuff.
I'm a product manager for a technology company with no technology background.
Come on.
I'm a recruiter. But I think when you force yourself out of your comfort zone, learn about, the role that you want to do, then it definitely does make a difference. And, just put yourself out there, grab opportunities.
I love it, man. Well, look, guys, if you made it to the end of this episode, I want to thank you as always. You guys are absolute legends. Highly recommend going and connecting with Stephen on LinkedIn. Say hi to him. Say hi, hey from the podcast as well. And look, guys, if you're looking to get involved with this podcast, either you're looking to sponsor it to get more eyeballs on your product and what you're doing. If you're looking to be a guest on the show, would love to hear from you. You can just find me at www.therealistrecruiter.com. You can find all past episodes as well. I think we're on like episode 90, so we'll get to 100 real soon. But guys, if you want to reach me, you find me either on the website. There's opportunities to connect with me, and then you can find me on LinkedIn as always. But guys, it's been a great episode, Stephen. We thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to kicking it with you, hopefully in Nashville again this year.
Yeah, man. I appreciate your time, as always. Nice to see you.
All right, brother. Yeah, you too.